I rise to strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized for
and
5
to
minutes.
revise and extend my remarks. First of all, I want to be clear that I support the funding to protect the citizens of the Midwest from flooding. And in fact, Louisiana haven't gotten more money than probably anybody else. I come from Florida. We have natural disasters all of the time. But the reason there is no funding for flood protection is because the Republican leadership cut the funding and the Republican members supported it. Let me be clear. I support the funding for the disaster. As a ranking member of the Transportation Subcommittee on Rail, I find that this funding cuts, which would block all of the remaining unobligated high-speed rail funding approved by the economic stimulus, is entirely unacceptable. And I am sick and tired of members coming to the floor saying that the stimulus money was a disaster. It is not a disaster that we put people to work in Florida and throughout the country. And in fact, if it wasn't for the stimulus dollars, teachers would have lost their jobs. The one area, and firefighters and police officers, we kept them employed. And that is a job while this economy is turned around. And let's don't forget how we got in this mess. I mean, institutional memory is important. When you have your head in the lion's mouth, you pull it out, you ease it out. What happened? How did we get here? When Bill Clinton left, we was operating with a surplus. But we had 8 years of Bush and 2 wars. And you think this mess started 18 months ago? No, it did not. It did not start. We've been practicing what I call reverse Robin Hood for 8 years. Nobody remembers that. When you kept giving tax breaks to the rich and billionaires, what happened here in December? Almost $800 billion that you gave to the not just millionaires, billionaires. And yet you come up saying in June and April, we can't send the pension checks. Yeah, we're spending money up here, but it's the priorities that you have. You don't have the priorities of taking care of the elderly people. You want to cut Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security while you give billionaires tax breaks and millionaires. And now you want to cut money for high-speed rail. But we know for every $1 billion we spend for high-speed rail, it generates 44,000 permanent jobs. But yes, we have some governors that's short-sighted, like my governor, Rick Scott of Florida, that sent back almost $3 billion. We have 11% unemployment. Well, what was he thinking about? Well, I guess he was thinking about he didn't want to see those people going to work and make Barack Obama look good, even though we have the most congestion in that area, and that our competition is there. If you look at Spain, if you look at France, you look at Germany, 200 miles, 1 hour and 15 minutes. That is the future of our country. But we have some short-sighted people here, people who only want to see, well, we need to balance the budget. Well, where were you when there was giving tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires? And you do it over and over again. That's the sad thing. If you put it on the board today, you would have the same vote. You would have the exact same vote. And every opportunity you have to vote, you vote to give billionaires and millionaires tax breaks. So, we started the rail system, and we are now the caboose, and we don't even use cabooses anymore. I am hoping that the American people will wake up. It is shameful that over and over again in the people's house, we attack the people that do not have lobbyists in Capitol Hill. And so I yield back the balance of my time, but I do know that elections have consequences. But the American people are watching you. I have voted times to raise the debt ceilings. Why did I do it under Bush? Because I voted for what is the best interest of this country and not the politics of the time.
Gentlelady, time has expired. Members should be reminded that they should address their comments to the chair. The gentleman from Arkansas, for what purpose do you rise?
Move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I think we're going to have to extend the space shuttle for an extra day to retrieve that thought process. It got so far out there in orbit. But let me just be very clear to kind of bring this back to the subject matter at hand. We're talking about taking funds that have been designated for a project in the future, near term or long term, but in the future, to satisfy an emerging issue that is in the present. Future versus present. In my district of Arkansas, the cresting of the Illinois River has ripped apart roads, washed out bridges. Floods have taken the lives of constituents of mine. People that will grow up without a mother or father. We have people living in tents. We have an urgent issue that is facing us today. The flooding has done damage across our entire state, leaving hundreds of Arkansans without homes and crop losses estimated at over $500 million. It has even been asserted by the other side that it's just farmland. Just farmland. Well, let me say to the people who make that argument, don't make that argument with your mouth full. It has also caused about $100 million in damage to dams, parks, roads, and waterways under the control of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that, left unrepaired, will only result in additional devastation in the next season. But it isn't just about what's happened in Arkansas. The entire Mississippi River and its tributary system has been imperiled by these tragedies. They are the lifeblood of our nation's commerce, and bordering farmlands are rich with fertile soil able to provide food for so many of the American people. Allowing these lands to be so vulnerable to future flooding will only imperil our nation's food supply. Offset or not to offset? It is an emerging issue. And on offsets, as you have already heard from my colleague from Louisiana, my colleague from Missouri, that supplemental appropriations, if fully offset over the last 3 decades, would have reduced by at least $1.3 trillion in debt, and reducing the public interest payments on this debt of $57 billion a year. Now, my friends, $57 billion of interest payments would build a lot of high-speed rail. I congratulate the chairman for his work on this energy and water bill. I support it. It is prudent, it is wise, it is necessary. I commend it to the leadership and to this entire House to pass it and restore the fiscal integrity of our country and give relief to the people who need it so desperately. And I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?